There's no one to end the war. Such a strange introduction, right? Yeah, imagine all the generals giving orders and not knowing if they'll be carried out or not. Not because the order is bad, yeah, but because half of those it's given to are already heading to the border with their headlights off. This isn't a scene from a movie, ladies and gentlemen. This is Iran this spring, and now the second shot. The president of the most powerful country in the world wants to end the war. He reaches across the table, but the other chair is empty. And not because the enemy turned away proudly, but because in Tehran there is no longer a person whose signature means, well, anything at all. In 30 minutes, I promise to explain to you what's actually happening. You'll understand the Iranian crisis more deeply than 9 out of 10 experts on TV, or as people in the comments like to call them, so-called experts. You'll see what they miss while chasing after flashy headlines. And at the very end, we'll come down from the heights of geopolitics right to the gas pump. And we'll answer a very down-to-earth question. If peace doesn't come by October or November, could all this hit your wallet? And who can stop this? Sorry, let me rephrase that. Not whether it could, but how hard will this hit your wallet? And can anyone stop this? It will be both alarming and, believe me, encouraging. Yes, watch until the end, because there you'll find something that almost no one is saying out loud right now. Everyone is looking at the map, at the strait, at the missiles, at the strikes, and everyone is asking one question: when will they come to an agreement? When will they end the war? But the real question is actually different. Not when they'll sit down, but is there even anyone who can? To stand up from the table and say to their people, I have signed this, and that's how it will be. This is the law. To answer that, we'll have to look inside, where the regime doesn't have just one crack, but 3. And this has become clear only very recently. On February 28, a U.S. strike on Tehran did what the Islamic Revolution had avoided for 46 years. The supreme leader was killed. Only the supreme leader was killed as a result of hostile intervention. To give you a sense of the scale, this wasn't the president who died. In Tehran, the president is mostly symbolic and easily replaced. The supreme leader controls everything: military, courts, money, and religion. He was the person whose word was final by definition, and now that word has fallen silent. One fine morning, as the Americans say, like in chess. There's a piece without which the game simply ends. Period. It's over. For 46 years, the whole structure was held together by the fact that at the top there was always one person. Irreplaceable, unfallen, infallible, and then one February morning, that was gone. The regime panicked and hurriedly tried to fill the void with his son, Mashtabak Ilya, announced as the new leader on March 9. But, the coronation turned out to be rather weak and a bit dirty. More than 30 assemblies of experts who were supposed to vote boycotted the event. The assembly building itself had already been destroyed by that time. And the finishing touch was the following. Even the most right-wing and orthodox, the Paidari faction, Paidari, came out and publicly, citing the Quran, declared, "The throne is not inherited by blood." Well, like it's a monarchy. Think about the irony. The very thing Iranians made the 1979 revolution against, now you see it this way. We're doing the same thing. The republic has been turned, well, sort of, into something else, into what was overthrown. Remember then, one word: legitimacy. Soon you will see how exactly its absence makes peace impossible for now. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. This is not just an army, it's the heart of the regime. Its sword, its wallet, its secret police, its business, its missile, its ideology, half of the economy, all of this is the core. As long as it stands, the regime stands. And since the beginning of 2026, rivets have started to fall out of this shield. It's not the ordinary soldiers who are fleeing, they are afraid. It's the mid-level officers who are fleeing. Those with experience are leaving through Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Afghanistan. Iranians record them. On their phones, right in the airports, at the borders. Footage shows people in uniform quietly leaving the country. And all of this spreads across the internet. But numbers are only half the story. The other half is what people are saying. And that's scarier than any statistics. For Iran, I mean. A former officer who fled to Azerbaijan spoke under the name Morad. And here is his phrase, which is worth remembering word for word. Inside the core, he said, many began to feel like a human shield. What could that mean? It turns out that in moments of danger, the commanders would hide themselves in their closest circle, family, friends, in a safe place, and the regular units were left at the bases exposed to attack. The higher-ups were evacuated while the lower ranks were left as bait, or as they say, a shield. Think about what that does to the army. A soldier is ready to die for an idea. He's ready to die for a commander who's right there with him in the same mud. But no one is ready to die for a commander who, at that very moment, is taking his family to a safe place and leaving you, well, you know where, as bait. And your family, the one you care about more than the commander's family, they're somewhere else waiting for you, hoping you'll come back. And at that moment, when a soldier realizes this, the army stops thinking as an army. It becomes a crowd of armed people, and everyone starts thinking, about what? About themselves. This is, in fact, the end of any army. Add paranoia to this. Defectors all say the same thing. After the strike on secret facilities, the Corps' intelligence increased surveillance. That is, they decided that the Israelis figured all this out by, so to speak, infiltrating the ranks, joining the ranks of the IRGC and the like. They're not watching the enemy, right? They're watching their own people. An officer is afraid to complain about unpaid wages or lack of food, because a complaint could turn into an accusation of working for foreign intelligence. Remember in the Soviet Union, right? Ours, the ones we had over there, they were intelligence officers, but theirs, the ones they had here, they were spies. And now here's the paradox, which is the essence of the whole drama. At the same time as this escape, the Corps tightened its grip. That is, they started tightening, so to speak, the straps, the noose, and so on. They pushed aside the civilian government. The regime is increasingly shifting its weight onto this pillar, which already has a crack in it. The harder you press, the closer that very sound gets. And here I'll pause for a second because trust is more important to me than a loud statement. The most dramatic statements about mass desertion mostly come from opposition, so to speak, well, channels and platforms. Of course, they have an interest in exaggerating the situation. Stay calm about the scale. But take the fact itself seriously. One defector is a joke. Dozens fleeing, 3 borders, and all saying the same thing. That's already kind of a trend. If at this moment you realize that you're seeing the whole picture for the first time and not just fragments of headlines, do one thing. Subscribe and hit the bell, ladies and gentlemen. This is important for you and for those who haven't seen this video yet. Videos are released on the channel every day, and tomorrow we'll analyze what has changed in a day. And now the most important thing. Now 3 cracks will come together into one answer. That's why this war is so hard to stop. The third crack is the street. From the end of December to mid-January, Iran was shaken by protests. It didn't start with politics, it started with an empty refrigerator. The currency after last year's war lost about 40% of its value. First the shopkeepers, then the students, then everyone together. The crackdown was brutal. Human rights activists report about 3,400 people were killed at the height of the protests. About 10,000 people were arrested. And here's a detail that almost everyone overlooks. In these clashes, both Corps fighters and Basij members were killed. That is, the people on the street were not just standing under bullets, they were fighting back. Somehow, weapons appeared on the street. And when people stop being afraid of death, the dictatorship loses its only real argument, the only thing it truly knows how to use. Now let's put it all together. Let's answer the main question. Could this civil strife, this war, this internal conflict be the very reason why Iran is unable to negotiate? And here is my answer, yes. And perhaps this is the most important thing to understand today. To make peace, it's not enough just to want peace. You need someone who can promise and deliver. A deal is an exchange. I make a concession here, you do it there. But a concession only has value when it comes from someone who can give it. The question is whether they have enough power to make it happen. If I sign a paper and tomorrow 4 people behind my back quietly playing with knives and pistols say that I had no right, we don't obey, then my signature is worth exactly as much as the paper it's on, less than the paper it's on. Apply this to Iran. So Mujtaba is sitting on the throne. Well, we don't know where he is sitting. Maybe he's lying down or maybe he's not even there anymore. but at least it's as if he's there. Yes, the one that a third of the clergy considers stolen the moment he gives in. And Harald Lehner, where they shout, the heir who didn't deserve the throne is now selling the blood of his murdered father. Well, there. For him, giving in isn't diplomacy. It's a death sentence for himself, even if the army wants peace. And who will carry it out? A truce is always held not by a signature at the top, but by those who hold the weapons. And the weapons are in the hands of the Corps, which, first of all, is not obliged to listen to civilians. Secondly, the aircraft. It's falling apart by itself. You make a deal with one commander and it's done, but another might take a shot just to prove a point. I'm over there. I'm not like that. You haven't made a deal with me yet. And the fuel. What is the new government relying on? Not on legitimacy. There is none. It stays in place because of the murdered leader. But revenge and compromise don't really go together. That's how I would put it. Revenge and compromise just don't work together. I don't know. There. On the same plate. Ha. A regime built on the slogan, "We will take revenge," cannot come to the people and say, well, okay, let's put this revenge aside, and now I want to tell you that we've reached an agreement. So add it up and you get something terrifying in its simplicity. This isn't stubbornness, it's a structural impossibility. Today in Tehran, there simply isn't an address where peace can be delivered, so that it would be accepted, signed for, and started. That's why the regime is escalating. Missiles choking the strait instead of taking advantage of the window for negotiations. Because, think about it, for a collapsing regime, a missile is safer than a signature. But will it kill? It will kill the one who put that signature. Since the old order has cracked, the inevitable question is, who's next? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Mujtaba, his father's shadow. He's been at his father's side since around 2008. He suppressed dissent, influenced elections from behind the scenes. He's, well, a homosexual. In his views, he's even tougher than his father. He controls, by some estimates, assets worth more than $1 trillion, and yet he has neither the love of the people nor the unity of the clergy, power without legitimacy. The second group is the moderates within the system, those who were suppressed during the coronation. There you have former President Rouhani plus the founder's grandson, Hassan Khomeini. Their voice has been suppressed, but it hasn't disappeared. In a cracking system, yesterday's losers can become contenders. And third, the opposition from outside. First of all, Reza. Reza Pahlavi is the son of the last Shah. After Khomeini's death, he once again became a prominent figure in the opposition. Resistance, sort of, right? And it's important to say honestly, his position is not give me back the throne. He talks about a free referendum where the people themselves will decide, so to speak, how they want to live. They claim any regime appointee will lack legitimacy and share its violent record. Let's not view this with rose-colored glasses. For some, Pahlavi is a symbol of hope, while for others, he is a controversial figure. He spent virtually his whole life in America. There is still no single opposition leader, and strangely enough, this is both a worrying and a good piece of news at the same time. It's good because no one has usurped the future. It's worrying because a power vacuum can be more dangerous than the power itself. Remember the main thing. Today, Iran's future is not predetermined. That's exactly why there's a struggle for it. Now let's come down from the heights of geopolitics to the ground. More precisely, to the gas station, because everything we're talking about ends with the price tag next to your home. Before the war, about 20% of the world's oil passed through the Strait of Hormuz, right? On February 28, it was effectively closed. The market reacted the way any market would when its artery is blocked. On April 7, the price of a barrel jumped to $138. Here is the chain you need to keep in mind as a whole. If the strait is blocked, oil prices go up. When oil prices go up, gasoline, diesel, and transportation costs rise. When transportation costs rise, everything that is transported becomes more expensive. That is, almost everything. And that's something else. That is, a word that makes everyone feel a chill in their chest. Inflation. What happens next? Analysts' forecasts converge in the range of $90 to $100 per barrel, well, on average for the year. Some say 110. Some expect a decrease to the 90s down to 90 by the end of the year, and some expect a rollback to 70 next year. But the conclusion from all this disagreement is the same. The sharp phase is expensive, but not eternal. The cost of war is high, but still finite. And now the question that concerns everyone, If peace doesn't come before November, will Trump be able to bring prices down? The honest answer is then partially yes, but not with the wave of a magic wand and not completely. What does he have at his disposal? The first is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He can release reserves and bring the price down. It's a real lever, but it's like aspirin, not a cure. It reduces the fever, but only for a week, not for a year. The second is domestic production. Remove restrictions, speed up permits, pump more. You know, the U.S. is the largest producer in the world. That's powerful. But oil doesn't come out of the ground by morning. Between making a decision and getting a barrel to the market, it takes months, actually more than months. And before November, guys, you won't be able to drill much new stuff. The third pressure point is to persuade Saudi Arabia and, well, the Emirates to open the taps. This could work the fastest, but they have their own interests and a high price often benefits them. It's a negotiation, not an order, and you still have to deliver it. They may have plenty of resources, but you still need to deliver it to the recipient. And the fourth point, here's the hard truth. The root of the high price isn't in the wells, the root is in the strait. As long as the narrow passage is blocked, no reserves and no drilling will bring the market back to, well, let's say to what it was when that 20% was still reaching the market. So the real leverage isn't oil-related, it's diplomatic and military to open and secure the strait. That's the only way. And we just discussed why that's so difficult. There's no one to negotiate with. It's a dead end. The price at your gas station won't depend on how well you can pump oil, but on whether it's possible to calm down a regime that can't accept peace. So I'll answer directly. By November, Trump is capable of softening the blow, bringing prices down to comfortable, well, only to pre-war levels when the strait opens. The strait will open not due to the economy, but based on how the Iranian infighting we began with ends. I promised encouragement, and this is not a consolation prize after a grim story. It's a genuine conclusion based on everything discussed. Yes, so it seems naive to expect beautiful, quick deals. That is, to finish by the end of last month, or at the latest by the middle of now, July, June practically. It seems impossible, so prices at the pump will still trouble the world. I'm not hiding that. But look at the same picture from a different angle. A regime unable to agree because it's collapsing internally is one that's falling apart from within. That's a completely different story than the unbreakable tyranny outplaying everyone again. Such wars often end not with a signature at the top, but with the fact that there is simply no one left at the top to fight. Not with an agreement, but with a change. When an officer records on his phone how his fellow soldiers are running across the border, when a soldier realizes that he is a human shield for his commander, who hides his own family and only thinks about them, when the street stops fearing bullets, when the throne is held by 44 votes. This is not a picture of strength that one must beg for peace from. This is a picture of a structure that has run out of internal fuel. There is one more reason to keep hope alive: the Iranians themselves. A people who rose up not because of someone else's ideology, but for the simplest and greatest things. For the right to control their own lives, their own work, their own future. Under fire, they showed that they value freedom more than fear. Such impulses can be suppressed for a month, for a year, but you can't shoot an idea whose time has come. Impossible. You can only postpone it. You can't shoot it. That's impossible. So don't be quick to feel sad that peace won't be signed tomorrow. Sometimes the absence of a deal with tyranny is not a failure. It's a sign that tyranny has reached the point where deals with it are no longer needed. The window is open for the first time in almost half a century, and beyond it there's no void. Beyond it are 80 million people who have understood what we've been discussing throughout this episode. They were kept in fear, not because there was strength at the top, but because those at the bottom believed for too long that this power couldn't be overcome. They've stopped believing that now. And that's the most important thing that happened in Iran this year. If you found this analysis interesting, or if it brought you some clarity, please give it a like. It helps videos like this reach people who want to think, not panic. And subscribe. Here, there's a big episode released every day. News plus analysis, calm and to the point. And if you're one of those people who not only wants to know what's happening, but also why things are the way they are and why they happen, Then I have a second channel called Roadmap to Freedom. 2 in-depth episodes a week. Where are we? We try to get to the very root, the very bottom, the source. The link is in the description. Check it out. There we think, reason, and speculate together. Goodbye. And protect your freedom. It loses value exactly when you stop believing in it, when you stop watching over it. See you tomorrow.